get to all the schools over the next few weeks. Sometimes it's kind of difficult, but again, you got to tie it in with the ability for the schools to see us.
Yes.
I want to bring something up to your attention. You brought up last year, you had asked us our interest in the old policy or the procedure that
Adopting a school?
the adopting the school. And I think that'd be a great idea. I mentioned that to Mr. Gary and to Jan, and they said that would be wonderful.
I do believe we polled, we did, didn't we last year? Didn't you? Didn't we? Did I? Didn't somebody?
What schools people wanted, but I don't think it ever got implemented.
We are, okay. So we can, if we can have Mrs. Colgrove
Yep, we absolutely can do that.
Great.
see, and we'll get that, and we'll get that out to everybody and make it official, because I'm assuming the PTOs are going to be meeting in person again.
Yep.
Perhaps we could,
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay, terrific. Thank you, Mr. Darnesi. Anyone else? Mr. Paszewski?
Again, I can't get over how Gary throws a shindig at him. A little bittersweet this year for me with my daughter Hannah in elementary, and now my son up at DePaulo. So it's the level of excitement that my kids have had, and again, always that end of summer blues, but then the immediate bright eyes, excited to be there, excited to be learning, excited to be engaged. Seeing friends, making new friends, it's absolutely awesome. To dovetail that into what we were presented with this morning as far as that particular worksheet, first and foremost, it's discouraging to sit on this board and to find things like this out from social media and not out to directly. I know a number of the people commenting on Facebook, and not many of them reached out to me, and that's troubling. I'm the chair of curriculum. We look into things like this. I essentially talked with people at laboriously last year over the fact that, again, we're going through things. We're starting to put things online. We're doing our best to be completely transparent, and to have one teacher's actions essentially now cloud what we do here as a community, as a district. It's troubling to me. I read the worksheet. Do I agree with it? Absolutely not. However, again, when I see something like this, I look at it as a teaching opportunity, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to manage people up and essentially try and help people be better versions of themselves, to teach better, to engage kids. Something like this, again, I think that we don't need to be doing this like this. It's more of a bringing somebody along and saying, like, this isn't acceptable if it's not part of the curriculum. And forward going into that with the committee as far as trying to learn more. If this was curriculum, or if this was, again, a worksheet that somebody thought was a good idea. I'm not looking for blood. I'm looking for people to be better. And, taking this, like I said, as an opportunity to really learn and to not keep belaboring these issues. Again, reading through this, every single person, you put 5 people of same socioeconomic background, same family lives and everything else, all 5 of those people are going to wind up in 5 different places by the time that you look 30, 40, 50 years down the road. And, to hear about the white privilege thing again, to hear about all these different things, again, like, I'm tired of it. For this to now be the talk, to have, I'm assuming that's why the news is here tonight, that this is the issue that we pick out of all the crap going on in the world right now. This is it, the first week of school, to start off negatively. Again, like, it's troublesome, guys. And again, reach out to us. We're here. I'm a community member. I live in town. Everybody has my cell phone number. I'm not going to belabor it more, but it's frustrating as hell.
It's frustrating. We get it. Anyone else? Communication from the administration then, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my opening remark is very much in line with what's been echoed relative to the opening of school. Having a chance to visit all the buildings, there was great energy the first day. Smiling faces were an absolute plus. It's something we have not been able to enjoy the past few years. And most importantly, I want to take this opportunity to thank our staff. There's so much work that goes on behind the scenes throughout the spring and over the summer to be our best for our students. And when you visit the buildings and you see it play out in real time, you're proud to have such a talented and dedicated team of professionals. Our teachers work throughout the summer. Ready. They come back 4 days early to get a boatload of mandated training sessions, but also to engage in their own professional learning. But beyond that, all of our 12-month employees are on the go the entire summer. As we know, time is sensitive. We want to be ready for our students. So a huge shout out and thank you all of those staff members from the secretarial staff, food service, technology. I jumped down with the technology team today and sung their praises to them because, Mr. Pepe and I both received multiple reports from staff that this is the smoothest it's ever gone on that end, that although there was a lot to do at the 11th hour, they all stepped up and got it done, and they appreciated the responsiveness of the technology staff. It's just all around was a great opening day. Along those lines, I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the Bread for Life. We received information this summer that with 3.5 weeks to go, they had already served 3,892 meals this summer to our students, which was 471 meals higher than 2021, and that was still with 3.5 weeks to go. And in addition to that, they continued to provide snacks in our middle schools and high school as something that was started by a former SPS school counselor who remembered when her students would often come down hungry, and so Bread continues to stock snack baskets for the students that they know there's something there if they need it. Another piece of news that we can be proud of is the special ed transportation account through the diligent work of one of the special ed transportation secretaries working on rideshare arrangements with surrounding towns and looking for third-party vendors. We were able to save $156,380 in specialized transportation costs this summer. And that employee, I certainly made a point to reach out to and acknowledge personally, because it's those efforts and thinking outside of the box that help us to do more for students with the funds that we have. As a summer work update, you have with you at the dais, for the sake of time, I decided to forego the PowerPoint presentation as part of the administrative report, but I have to acknowledge, we know that when the building's empty on the final day of school until they open, it is the gates open, so to speak, for the maintenance and grounds department, and they're able to accomplish a lot of these summer projects and work orders that are difficult to do when school's in session and the buildings are occupied. And as you can see by the compilation materials here, just a tremendous amount of results and turnout from Mr. Romano and his staff, and just wanted to be sure to acknowledge and thank them for their work. In addition, I do have Mr. Risser here tonight. I wanted to take an opportunity to invite him up to the podium just to give you a brief description, because I know we spoke this spring about some of the athletic facilities projects, and I wanted to use this opportunity to clarify for the community. I understand there was some chatter on social media that the work has begun and the referendum hasn't occurred. This is work that has always been on the capital improvement plan, slated outside of the athletic facilities project, that was related to immediate needs because of safety concerns that were present at the facilities. And also the Title IX report that we were in charge of complying with within a certain timeline. And so this is the work that occurred is not part of the athletic facilities project, but I do want to allow Mr. Risser to speak to that. And Mr. Risser, before I allow you to highlight that material for the board, I just want to take one last announcement. I think we had a parent volunteer that is part of the ESPN community outreach team, who is a Thalberg parent who reached out to the ESPN community outreach team and other Thalberg parents, and they repainted the outside recess blacktop area to allow the typical playground games you might see with hopscotch, foursquare, and things like that. And it's a nice testament to members of the community coming together to do something nice for the students prior to the opening day of school. So I wanted to acknowledge and thank them for that effort as well. Mr. Risser, if you don't mind, if you could come up, the board has it has been uploaded onto the portal, so the public will certainly have access to it. But I'd like you to highlight some of the work we were able to accomplish this summer.
Thank you, Mr. Medancy, for a few minutes, and thank you, board members, and Chairperson Clark. Thank you very much. I'll be brief here. I just want to, before I give a very brief overview of the work, on behalf of our Southington student athletes, our coaches, parents groups, and all the Blue Knights stakeholders in the community that love their athletics, we're very appreciative and extremely grateful for the funding support provided by you as board members, the town of Southington as well, and for these safety and Title IX improvements that we've been able to get accomplished this summer. So thank you for that. I'd also be remiss if I didn't also thank Steve, Mr. Romano and his staff, and also Miss Mellett and her staff, Miss Hill as well, in what they did this summer for all the contributions and team effort they put together. So thank you, Peter and Jen. Pass along to Kaya for us, please, too. So I'll get right underway here. The major project of the summer was focused on the softball field. It's in your packet there. Thanks to Eric in the operations department. She took some before and after pictures here. Basically, the softball improvements this summer have included new fencing, if you've driven by Pleasant Street, the repair of the outfield fencing, which isn't as noticeable from the street, but it's there, the leveling of the playing surface, which is going to improve our drainage conditions during the season. But most notably, and I'm saving it to the back, the home and visitor dugouts are on the way. They're being readied for installation in the next few weeks. So you'll see those up in a few weeks. And in addition to that, a new pitcher bullpen has been, we now have a place where the Blue Knights can warm up the pitcher. And we also have renovated our batting cage and turned that into a hybrid pitching bullpen, for the visitors when they're there. So we also have on the way the finishing of the handicap walkways into the facility, and also the spectator bleachers are now going to be moved to a new spot. So they'll be in a better location for our fans. So very excited about that. And we have 5 other things that I'll quickly hit. If you go to the track, the stadium track, it's now been resurfaced at the starting line, where this year we had to avoid that starting line because we had went down to the asphalt. So if you go out to the track now, it's not only, you see the middle picture in your handout there, it's been painted now. The first picture was when it just got resurfaced, but now it's been painted, it's ready to go. So we're ready to resume our main starting line activity next year. And we're appreciative of the funding for that. If you go to the next page, the Varsity baseball field had the improvements done to the lip on the outfield. That was a real concern of balls potentially coming up and hitting athletes in the face or head or eye. So that has been repaired. It's been resodded. So the outfield to the infield. This was not as significant as a project as softball, but it was safety oriented. I think we started talking about this about a year and a half ago. So thank you for that. Then we can go next to the tennis courts. Somebody already noted in the audience to me today that they noticed the tennis courts have been patched. Yes, they have. If you notice, the cracks have now been filled in the picture. The next thing to do is now paint it. We have to paint it green, blue, and white where we had to do the cracking. But I've been told that within a week or two, that matter of fact, maybe within the week, next week, it'll be painted, and then that project will be completed. And if you go to the next page, we talked about the final 2 projects that round out the 6 projects. The 5th project was the railings were put in on the bleachers so that senior citizens have an easier time getting up. It's a section in the bleachers. It's not the entire bleachers, but it's a section when you first come in. So that's been done. And also we did the safety fencing around the bleachers so that there was a potential fall gap for young children to fall the bleachers. I think many of you remember that. So now that was taken care of on both the sides and the back. So essentially, thanks to a lot of hard work over the summer, we're proud to report that every concern that we pointed out, I guess back to November of 2020, has now been addressed. And when the softball is completed and the tennis courts are painted, we're going to be happy to invite all you out and have excited to host you. It'll be a lot more fun when you come out now. We'll be able to look at what we've been able to accomplish. But I just want to thank everybody, thank the board again for your support, thank the town of Southington for their support as well. So Thank you, Steve.
Yep. Thank you.
And thank you, because those are safety concerns that we've all had. So to have them finally addressed and rectified is really wonderful. So thank you. Thank you for your work.
And thank you for
Gratitude.
fixing the, of course, Mrs. Clark had to give me one of her looks for fixing the railings on the bleachers for the elderly that have to go up there. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm trying to avoid calling it the senior section, but if you want to call it that, you can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Clark, one comment, if I may,
Sure.
to the administration. I want to compliment both Mr. Pepe and Mr. Medancy on the convocation video that you made. I really laughed. I mean, I wasn't making fun of you. I thought it was very well done. It was just a really neat, different way of doing things. And it had to be well received because it was great. Your son, I understand, Mr. Pepe, did it? Okay, it was great. I was wondering, though, why Mr. Torino, you didn't have him read it at the end. I mean, that just would have put the frosting on the cake. Very good job, though. I really did enjoy that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good.
Madam Chair, that concludes my this evening.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Can I make I'm going to follow up with Mrs. Carmody on a convocation. It was very well done.
Yeah.
It was. I think back in the early years when everybody would be at the high school in the auditorium, and I had the honor of addressing the whole staff. And I brought this up many times, but I just love to bring it up. I wish Rick was here. But I said, welcome everyone, and the mic got shut off. The sound system went dead. I gave my whole speech. Not one person heard it.
Was that good or bad? Was that good or bad?
I heard it, and
Okay.
I thought it was great.
Depends who you ask.
But yeah, I wish he was here to bring that up again. But it was very well done.
Good.
Thank
It
you.
was very good job, really.
Okay. Any other? That's it? Okay. Before we get to public comments, I would like to read something, please. Each speaker is allotted 5 minutes. No oral presentation shall include charges or complaints against any employee of the Board of Education, regardless of whether or not the employee is identified in the presentation by name or by another reference that tends to identify the individual. All charges or complaints against employees shall be submitted to the Board of Education under provision of Board of Education policy. And no boisterous conduct shall be permitted at any Board of Education meeting. Persistence in boisterous conduct shall be grounds for summary termination by the chair of that person's privilege of address. If necessary, the chairperson may direct those who are acting in a boisterous manner to leave the premises. Okay? And if anyone does want to speak, you have signed in over on the laptop over there? Okay. Okay. And when you come up to speak, please give your name and your address. Okay. Yeah, you've got, oh, I like it. Fancy. Do you like it? That would be something I would have.
Because my phone is on silent. I saw what you had to go off with the alarm.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
It was actually recommended by a board member.
Oh, good idea. Okay.
It is?
John, do you want a meat stick?
No.
Spicy.
No, those kill me.
I bet do you have that?
Okay.
Hi,
Speak, okay.
Here, you can have.
I'm Pat Tavolazzi. I'm from the Plantsville section of town, 99 Westbrook Road, Plantsville, Connecticut. I've spoken multiple times last year about many things, not particularly about the CRT too much, but more about how I felt our systems were dumbing down in the program and we needed to set higher bars and get back to what these kids are capable of. But on occasion, I did mention, and I even gave an example of something that had happened in a classroom on a first day of school where a young man was asked in a middle school how he identified. Please forgive me. He pulled open the front of his pants and said, "I'm a dude." He had no clue what this was about. This gets brought to our children. Some of them are clueless about it. They don't need to be taught about it. That's a mom and a dad's role, or a parent or a guardian's role. Thank you, by the way, Joe, for your wonderful comments about this. And I'm looking forward to working with the board about this because this shouldn't happen. We all know why we're here tonight. It was brought to our attention that a teacher, a rogue teacher, let me put it this way, a rogue teacher. This isn't the norm. Our teachers are wonderful teachers in the school, but there are rogue teachers. I want to know one question going forward. How are we going to police this? If a student didn't have the courage to go to her administration up at the high school about this, so Joe, I don't know how you didn't hear, but if they didn't have the courage, the backlash that's going to come to that student for bringing this forward, this is the fear we live in to get the voice out there of children. But you know what? Now they're smarting up. They realize, I don't want to deal with this. They shouldn't have to think of this every single day they go to school. They shouldn't have to think about if I say I'm the wrong pronoun, if I say I'm not this, but I don't believe in this. Why are they under that scrutiny? Why? To protect the class that is really a minority, whereas the majority just want to go to school and get an education and move on with their lives. This shouldn't be in their face every single day. So we have a rogue teacher. She comes out with this, I don't know if it's a syllabus or an assignment. Some of the things on here blew me away. Marginalization, the treatment of people or persons of insignificant or peripheral socially white privilege. White privilege refers to societal privilege that benefits white people over non-white people in some society. She didn't even get the definition correct. When you start to go down the list and you look at some of the stuff, and it's plagued, and I know you all read it, and I know you're appalled, and I appreciate that, and thank you for that. But as a parent and a grandparent sitting back looking at this, no individual is personally responsible for what the white people have done or the historical decisions of the American government, but you are, capital letters, responsible for whether or not you currently uphold that system and elevate white people over people of color. How in God's name did this fly in under the door? We have a screening process, and I'm sure that went through there. These are things, and then I point to one that happened last year that came to our attention. These can't keep happening. We have to have a screening process. We have to have a policing process. I, for one, feel we should have this in the classroom. Given this society and the way it's moving, and these young rogue teachers coming from indoctrinated colleges who now want to indoctrinate our children with their philosophy and political views rather than stick to a curriculum that's approved. How do we police this? I ask you to come up with some ideas. We're willing to work with you. One of them is put some monitors. We don't have to put them on the children. We don't have to do that. We can cut voice out, but we need to see what's going on in these classrooms because you owe that to these parents. You owe that. And now that you've seen 2 incidences of it just in 1 year, we haven't even completed a full year from the first incident. We need to do something. It's there. When I came here last year and I said, this is here, I got laughed at. I got things that came back to me that said, somebody, well, we won't mention who, said, don't listen to those people that come up here to speak. You have to listen to us because we're only going to get louder. And our children are now speaking. They're coming to you. They're saying, we're uncomfortable with this. Why do I have to start out my day, my first day of school, and go through this? We have to police this. Please, I implore you, as a school board, we will work with you in any fashion we can, but please police this because it's not making it through the screening process. And then there it is after they're in there. I'm happy it happened the first day. These poor children it happened to aren't, but I'm happy because now we address it and we can move forward, but we need to police this. Now we're actually in a state in our school system where we need to police these teachers, bringing in these ideologies that are just completely off the wall, and they're indoctrinating our children, and you can poo-poo that and call it whatever you want, but 95% of conspiracy theories are true. So we're telling you, don't let them indoctrinate our wonderful town of Southington. These are good kids. They are good teachers, but there are rogue teachers, and they're like a cancer. Please do something.
Hello, my name is Ella Perillo, and I'm a student of Southington High School. So a student that was upset about the packet that was handed out we talked about it a little bit. It was discussed on the cross-country team. She decided to go to counseling, which then sent her to administration. They said they couldn't do anything about it at the moment, but she felt very uncomfortable talking to the teacher about it herself. That is an uncomfortable topic to confront a teacher about. So I'd like to speak on that. In 1954, the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court outlawed segregation in schools. We look at the foundation today, and every school is mixed, the way it should be. But what shouldn't be is what they are teaching. Earlier this week, I got handed a 3-page packet, a packet that was very detailed on everything I should and shouldn't believe. One of these points in the packet includes what the lady spoke about before me. An ally is someone who acts to challenge institutionalized bias and prejudice. Allies educate themselves and speak and act in a way that is purposely supportive of a marginalized group, including people of color, people in the LGBTQI+ community, and people with disabilities. That is quoted from the packet. The second thing, once again quoted from the packet, is no individual is personally responsible for what white people have done or the historical decisions of the American government, which I agree with, but listen to the second part. You are responsible for whether you are currently upholding the systems that elevate white people over color. This is discrimination if I've ever seen it. We shouldn't have to talk or treat black people, or people of color, as the black packet says, differently because of their skin color. If my friend is a person of color, I will treat them the same exact way everyone else gets treated, and I expect the same in return. This is what will cause a divide. There is no white privilege. That leads to my next point. In a section of the package, it has in bold, white privilege. It states, white privilege refers to social privilege that benefits white people over non-white people in some societies, particularly if they are in otherwise the same social, political, or economic circumstances. Last time I checked, there should be no privilege on each side, and there isn't. People of color shouldn't get privileges, and neither should whites. God created us all the human race. We are not animals, and we are not a species of cats or dogs. We are one. And if this country doesn't get that together soon, there will be an even greater divide than there was before. The last quote from the article is, if you look the other way or deny that these systems exist, you are the problem. You can know in your heart that you don't hate anyone, but still contribute to their oppression. This last sentence hurts me. I don't have anything against anyone. We are on this earth to love everyone equally, just as Jesus did. I'll tell you what the problem is. It's the craven desire to tear this generation apart so we don't know how to stand strong. Stand strong against the true evil of our country, that is packets like this, and the world. All this is doing is pointing out our differences that have no meaning and that we are somehow responsible for people of the past. I'll ask you now, why is this all right? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Travis Riccio. I'm a senior at Southington High School. You guys may remember me from last year as I spoke on CRT. Sorry I'm not dressed for the occasion tonight. I wasn't preparing to speak. I just wanted to take this time to thank Mr. Crocco so much for taking care of the situation perfectly last year. Mr. Crocco handled the situation very professionally. Same with Mrs. Northcott. Both of them fixed the issue with appropriate attention and respect. They then made me feel comfortable and safe and wanted, which I never felt before. Now I am saddened to hear CRT is shown again in another class. This scares me because some students feel just like me but are too afraid to speak. It's hard to speak. It really is. Some kids are really quiet and don't know, and they're so upset it just builds up. This isn't fair to make them feel suffocated and targeted. I hope you guys handle this situation just as well as you handled mine last year. Again, I would love to thank Mr. Crocco and Mrs. Northcott. They are the best. I believe CRT is dangerous to the world and our amazing community of Southington. As many know, I'm very conservative. Just looking at me. It's hard for me to fit in nowadays. CRT will make it harder for people to fit in, just like me. I feel unpleased to hear that CRT is coming back and not monitored. I saw the assignment that was dealt that is bringing this issue back. It honestly disgusts me, but I understand you guys have no control. You guys can't helicopter every single teacher. I respect everything you guys do for us. I know you guys are investigating. I have faith in you guys. Please fix this. You guys are amazing.
Thank you, Travis.
Michael Krasansky, 27 Hitching Post Drive. So I'm here to speak on the same topic that the others have tonight. So basically, I was shared that document today, actually just early this morning. And so that's why I didn't go to the board first. It was just something, and I was told there's a Board of Ed meeting, and I was very concerned with the document. So that's why I'm here. I'm not trying to bypass any channels, but I think it needs exposure. As you know, I was here at pretty much every board meeting last year. And when things like this happen, I'll continue to come. So things shouldn't be hidden, shouldn't be behind the scenes. Well, this thing is happening, so let's just go to one board member and say, no, when something is an issue for me, it needs to be exposed to the media, to whoever. It's not something to be dealt with behind the scenes. It needs to be, witnessed by, the town, what's going on. So, so first thing I'm asking about when reading this document, is this a class that the teacher's teaching to help students improve their reading, writing, and speaking skills? It's English class. So I'm paying taxes so my kids can learn how to read, write, and communicate properly. I'm not paying taxes for them to learn the stuff in this document. So parents are skeptical of public education because of things like this. So that's why we're here. We're not going to hide it. We're not going to whisper in a Board of Ed member's ears and, take care of this behind the scenes. This needs to be brought out in public because that's the way things will get done. That's how change will happen. Okay. So some terms in this document that I saw that I'm questioning, well, it mentions cultural appropriation. So, what is this? Does that mean we cannot eat Italian foods like pizza and spaghetti? Are we appropriating that culture? I'm serious. Okay. Do we need to get rid of Notre Dame's mascot as it's appropriating Irish culture? It's in the document. What is this cultural appropriation? Who decides what we can borrow from other cultures and why? Okay. So I'd like to know the answer to that. If you're going to use that term in class, then answer those questions for me. Okay. Cultural humility. Do we need to bow down when we speak about other cultures and be subservient to them? Does cultural humility apply to all cultures or just ones promoted and protected by special interest groups? Does the Mario Brothers video game display cultural humility? Why have I not heard the Italian community raising their voices against the name of the video game? Institutional racism, it's also in the document. Who decided this is a fact, and why are they allowed to promote this theory in the classroom? Okay. Gender non-conforming. Why are we teaching kids about sexual topics in English class, let alone any class in high school? They can learn about sex from their parents and other sources outside of school. It doesn't belong in the high school classes. If you're going to teach sex ed in high school, teach it like when I went to school, about biology, okay? How that works, how a baby is produced. Transgender. Again, why are we teaching kids about sexual topics in English class, let alone any class in high school? They can learn about sex from their parents and other resources outside of school. It doesn't belong in high school classes. Indigenous. Who are classified as indigenous? Are Native Americans / Indians indigenous? Didn't they migrate from Asia over a land bridge many years ago? Are people in Poland indigenous? Their land was invaded and taken over, and their country wiped off the face of the earth, the map, many times throughout history. Okay, are they indigenous? No one calls them indigenous. Okay. People have been migrating all over the world since the beginning of time when our ancestors left Africa. No one is indigenous. Social justice, why is that in this document? What does this even mean, aside from it being a term politicians use to buy votes? Safe space. Well, what I see is that's a tool used to silence others, particularly conservatives, who don't share your viewpoint. Why is that in the document? People of color, what does that mean? Who defines it and why do they get to define it? It's another term politicians use to divide people and attempt to buy their votes. Latinx, that's in the document. About 3% of Latinos use this term, and a large percentage actually are very against its use. Okay? Why is this being promoted in class, this term? Okay, there's another term, my spirit animal, that was referenced in the document, that it's a Native American kind of term for a certain meaning that other people can't use. Well, who gets to decide what terms I can use and not use? Who put that person in charge? I'll use this term and any other term I want, and whoever doesn't like will need to get over it. It's a free country, okay? So no words belong to just certain groups and are for their use only. So pretty much every term I'm reading in this document pretty much disgusts me, okay? So why is this racist, divisive document like this, clearly blaming white people for all the ills of the world, being used in the classroom? This is critical race theory, which is not supposed to be taught in Southington Public Schools. All right, I'm almost done. The last thing on it's totally Separate topic is my daughter on her first day at DePaulo was given a questionnaire asking her what her pronouns are. And that was a mandatory question, okay? I don't want her answering those questions. I don't want anyone asking my daughter what her pronouns are, okay? I got a problem with that.
Susan Zabahansky from Plantsville. I don't know if I want this document in the record, so I'll give it to the secretary, I'm assuming. I first want to start out by saying that I find it sad that parents are reprimanded for how they go about bringing attention to a particular issue with the school system. You all may think that there's a great way that should be done and it should be done in a certain order, but to tell a student who went to the administration and didn't feel that she was heard the way she wanted to be heard, that she needs to go through a certain route to be able to speak is ridiculous. There's many parents here who have been coming to these meetings talking to you about CRT. I haven't touched on the topic because I didn't have proof that it was really being taught. And there's Board of Education members sitting on this dais that have told people that's not being taught in our school system. It may not be part of the curriculum, but we need to figure out ways that we can get this exposed, because there's teachers walking around with BLM stickers on their badges now that maybe we can't have flags written on the boards of their classroom. The students have presented us with this information, and there's no policing of this. And when we approach the board with stuff and we're just told, well, we have to do this behind closed doors because personnel matters, it's understandable. I understand that's confidential, but it doesn't tell the community what you're doing to rectify a situation. And there has to be some kind of bridge between the Board of Ed, the superintendents, and the community so that they understand what the process is for a teacher who goes rogue like this and produces a document that is clearly CRT. It came from the University of Arizona, where CRT, we were told, is only, it's only taught as a theory in college. Well, here we have it from a college curriculum, clearly CRT. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And when you're talking about oppressors versus oppressed, it's racist. It's racist. And there is no reason that any teacher in our community should be teaching anything that is a social view, a political view. It should not be taught in our school system. Keep to the basics and we won't have these kind of issues. And there has to be a monitoring system. I mean, to establish trust between parents and the superintendents and the Board of Education, because when children are crying at home because they were meant to feel less than, that's unacceptable. And I hope we can do better. And I don't think coming up here and having Board of Ed members reprimanding the way in which this information was presented is a good way to start things off, because there are many of us who have reached out to you separately and felt nothing was done, or where we were belittled and told by other Board of Education members that they were told, don't listen to those people. So when you hear stuff like that, it doesn't give you confidence to come to you guys directly, and we have to bridge that gap and make some healing. Thank you.
My name is Jenny. I have a little bit of a different perspective on the events that occurred.
Jenny, excuse me for a second. Could you give your full name and your address, please?
Sure. Jenny Cinquamani, 953 Flanders Road. Thank you. It's
you.
my first time at one of these meetings, so excuse me if I don't.
That's
I'm
fine.
not familiar with the proceedings, but I felt compelled to come forward because my daughter was actually the student who came forward and spoke to one of the counselors about the document that was passed out in the classroom. And I think what's unique about our situation is that we are a Puerto Rican family. And so we are a family where we have family members that are darker and some that are lighter. And we share our table and our life with people from many different spectrums of the racial line and ethnic lines. And I think what we took away from this as an opportunity for discussion, and my daughter and I have a very good relationship. We talk about everything. I was grateful that I was approached by a school administrator ahead of going to pick up my daughter and hearing about this incident. So I am appreciative of that. I was not blindsided by the event. And to be honest, I'm not even angry. But I think what I would like to leave you all with is that the unintended consequence of this, and I am sure that the teacher who put this document together did not mean for it to be hurtful, but it is divisive. And the questions that arose in our home were really about what does this mean for me and the people that I share my life with? And how could the foundational premise of how we approach learning and sensitive subjects be that there is a group of guilty and a group of innocent, or a group of oppressors and a group of victims? And that shuts down the conversation around race and ethnicity, and some of the social disparities that do exist, whether people want to acknowledge them or not. They are real. Jim Crow laws are not so far removed from our history. There are people still alive in this country who experience that. So I think it is important to set some rules about how you engage in the classroom when you are touching on these difficult subjects. But to open the school year with creating division is not a way to facilitate that. So I think that I would encourage you, because this is not the first time that I receive things or hear things from my daughter about how difficult subjects are approached in the classroom, and whether or not these materials are vetted, or the processes that you have in the background. I think they need to be looked at. And I would encourage you to think about how you approach the subjects of diversity, equity, and inclusion with your teams. Because I can tell you with certainty that even though my daughter is not supposed to know the political or social spectrum that the educators sit on, our students do know that. And those topics will trickle into the classroom. It's unavoidable. But there are ways to approach these difficult conversations, and this was definitely not it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Okay, then moving along on our agenda, we have a committee from the Finance Committee. Mr. Sharnowski.
Thank you. Bear with me for a sec here. We do have a lot here. The first thing that we discussed, we met on September 1st, so last Thursday. Myself, Sean Carson, Dave Darnowski, Zay Oshana was there as well with Jen Mellett, Kaya Hill, and Pete Romano. The first thing that we discussed was the bid award for 2023-06, which sought the services for 4 sites. We had 4 vendors respond to that bid. One vendor did not bid for all 4 sites, and 2 vendors were recommended for that award, with the totaling bid amount being $161,500. The lowest vendor at the Kelly Elementary School has decided to rescind his bid, and therefore the second lowest bidder was recommended for that award. It's also noted that the recommended vendor, who was already awarded the snow removal services at South End, is in an optimal location for snow removal services at Kelly Elementary, since the equipment is housed in the vicinity of the school. And I do have a motion on that. And it's move to award bid number 2023-06, snow removal and sanding services as recommended by the administration.
Second.
Good.
Any questions? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The next thing that we discussed was that we had a RFP for engineering services related to the facility study for the 5 elementary schools that was due on September 9th. And Mr. Romano indicated that we had 2 companies that had contacted him for some tours of the 5 schools. And okay. Hello. We also had Mr. Oshana and Mr. Darnowski that volunteered to be available for the panel reviews for the RFP. So that's coming up here. No motion on that one. Moving on, we also had some discussion regarding the financial closeout for the operating budget for fiscal year 2022. And we are looking at an unexpended balance of $495,848. And that will be moved into the unexpended funds account, which was approved by the Board of Finance on June 8th of 2022. We also discussed that for the fiscal year of 2022 to 2023, we also have an additional pay period. So there's going to be 27 pay periods a year. And this happens once every 14 years. So for the salaried employees, there really is no impact to the budget. But we do have hourly employees where the 27th pay period will fall on June 30th, 2023. So that unbudgeted impact for that fiscal year 2022 to 2023 will be approximately $239,000, and that also includes their hourly pay, the MERS contributions, and the taxes. So the net balance to the unexpended funds for the fiscal year of 22, subtracting that amount, would be $256,863. That's all I had for the financial closeout. And moving on to, we also discussed the non-lapsing funds for 2019, 2020, 2021 fiscal years, where we had reviewed the previously approved projects in those non-lapsing accounts for all those years. And the approved projects not yet started will also be reviewed and prioritized in the new year. A couple more things here. So moving on to the food services, we discussed the food services financial report for fiscal year 2022, the balance sheet, as well as all the meal counts and everything. As you guys know, Southington Schools did participate in the seamless summer option for the entirety of the 21 to 22 school year. So that means basically breakfasts and lunches would be free for all students. And because they're free, we did have some increased participation. It was pretty drastic. So we had about $337,000 in sales for a la carte items, but revenues mostly came from the government receivables and grants. So net income for the school year was $1,055,268. Ms. Mellett had also mentioned that going forward, we do have to monitor that cash flow because we don't receive the government reimbursements for September until November. And I think everybody knows, but the reimbursements are going to be ending soon this year. And the last item I had is that we had a miscellaneous topic where we reviewed some memos documenting some vendor awards made by the superintendent. So the first vendor award that we discussed was the painting services at the high school, Thalberg and Hatton schools, which was awarded to Scholar Painting in the total of $45,600. We also discussed the state contract awarded to Bartholomew Contract Interiors for the carpet replacement at the high school in the amount of $78,745, as well as the removal and replacement of the underground tank at Strong Elementary School, which was awarded using the, I'm not really sure what this is, Easy IQC Construction Cooperative Pricing Platform. And that was awarded to Martin Laviero in the amount of $215,425. That's all I had.
Could you have Mrs. Mallett perhaps explain the Easy IQC Construction Cooperative?
The Easy IQC platform is available to municipalities and boards of eds, and it's basically a service where construction type projects have been pre-bid and allowing us to piggyback on bids awarded through that platform. And it is used by our town as well. And we've used the Easy IQC for other projects as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Mellon. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No? Thank you, Mr. Charnowski. And moving along, Superintendent's Report, the Personnel Report.
Yeah, recommend that the Board of Education approve the personnel report as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I make a comment. I don't think I've ever seen such a lengthy personnel report, so kudos to the personnel department, Michelle and your staff. I'm sure you worked very, very hard this summer. It's very obvious. Thank you very much for your hard work.
Mrs. Carmody. Town Government Communications. Mr. Medancy. I don't have any either, so moving right along. New business, JFK Middle School chiller sound proposal. Mr. Medancy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you may recall, last year we had a gentleman come to a town council meeting and made a request of the town to continue to investigate options relative to the sound of the chiller behind Kennedy Middle School. This was something that had been brought up, over the course of the years. We looked at potential remedies. Many were cost prohibitive. Some weren't necessarily logistically practical. And so with that said, Mr. Romano worked with the town and Annette Turnquist. They met a vendor out there who wants to discuss some of the findings of the conversation with the vendor and some possible alternatives with this board, because ultimately, given that the chiller is on school property, the remedy would ultimately be up to us if we decide to go a certain route. So, Mr. Romano, I'm going to give the floor to you.
Good evening, Board of Ed, staff, students. Linda. First of all, kudos on the Easy IQ. I think she's going for my job. I'm a little nervous. You nailed that. Thank you. And Mr. Medancy stole a lot of my thunder. I'm going to give you as brief an overview as I can, but make sure it's clear for you. In 2015, while the schools were being renovated, the middle school building committee discussed the sound level of the chillers at JFK based on a concern by a resident. This resident has expressed concern intermittently since then. The architect and engineer reviewed the options to reduce the sound level of the chiller. They presented a product that was designed for the chiller and wouldn't void the warranty by Trane. The cost was north of $200,000 at each school. The SPD also participated by taking decibel readings at the property lines and at the street. The average decibel level at both locations was 60 decibels. They also took a reading at Milldale Street with vehicles passing by. That was 70 decibels, so it increased by 10. Excuse me. Based on that information that was presented, the building committee chose to not take any action. So fast forward to now. Town council was approached this winter by a resident, the same resident, regarding the level of the chiller noise. The town engineer was asked to research possible solutions. I shared the previous history with her. She and I investigated options. We met on site with a contractor that proposed a sound attenuating blanket system. He took decibel readings at the line prior to startup of the chiller. So without the chiller running, it was 51 decibels. We fired up the chiller, ran it at full load, and went back over to the abutting property and took the same reading and came up with 61. So it's 10 decibels higher with the chiller. There's no denying that. 60 decibels is not considered to be obnoxious in any way by standards of people who work in that industry. Having said that, it's a winding sound. There's no denying that. I'm not trying to say that he's hearing things. The vendor provided a proposal of $30,093 to furnish and install a system that would reduce the decibel level. When I pressed him for what the reduction would be, he stated that he could get a 60 to 70% decrease in the decibel level. That sounds phenomenal, but the 60 to 70% decrease is based on it's already at 50 if there's nothing there, It's at 60 when it's running, so there's only 10 decibels of difference. So he can reduce it by 6 or 7 decibels is what he's claiming. The town is now requesting that the Board of Ed pay for the system. The primary concern that I have is that the potential for overheating of this chiller. These blankets were not designed with the chiller in mind. They're designed to absorb sound. So when the blankets go on, it reduces the airflow. There's a strong likelihood that the chiller will overheat. If the BOE decides to consider this purchase, my recommendations are that you allow me to make the contractor guarantee that 6 to 7% decibel reduction, 60 to 70% decibel reduction. And if he doesn't achieve it, he doesn't get paid. The only other caveat that I would have is that operations will closely monitor the temperature of the chiller. And if it appears that it's raising the temperature chiller, we need to be allowed to remove one section of panel, the panel that wouldn't be near this neighbor who has a concern. I can't tell you what it'll raise the decibel level, but I can't afford to ruin a chiller for this. Any questions?
It's just math-wise. So you said it's 60 decibels, 61 decibels when it's running.
Yes.
And they're claiming they can reduce it by 60%.
Yes, which 60% of, so if it's already at 50 with nothing running,
Right.
and it's at 60 when it is running, 10%, excuse me, 60 to 70% of 10 decibels is 6 or 7 decibels.
Okay, so that's what they're
That's all you're reducing it.
because a 60% reduction of 60 decibels is 36 decibels, right? So
Yeah.
that's not what he's claiming.
No, that's not what it reads that way, but you have to make sure you understand what he's saying. So yes, it's only a 6 to 7 decibel decrease. So it'll be, if he puts the blankets on, he needs to get it to 54 or 53 decibels. I'm sure he's going to say 54.
Because I did go out there because this had come up before that gentleman came to this meeting once before, a long time ago.
Sure.
And after he came, I went out to his house. I'm glad he didn't see me wandering his backyard. He said he slept through this, so I don't want to knock on the door, but I went and wandered in the backyard. It's loud. I mean, I will use the term obnoxious.
Sure.
It's a whining,
That's-
obnoxious noise. And I think part of the problem is, and one of his comments that he made when he was here was, I can't open my windows.
Yeah.
Or I can't sit in the backyard because it gets to you. So if you sit there for a little while it's running, it is loud.
Sure.
It's pretty obnoxious.
Sure. The problem is, the confusion is, and you're 100% right. Yeah. The problem is you can reduce the decibels, but you're not reducing the frequency. So, if you ever...
Frequency meaning the whine.
Yeah, the whining. That's really where the irritation is for him. You're not getting rid of that. All you're doing is reducing the level of it, but you're still going to hear it. It's not like it goes away.
I don't know the answer. I'm not
I don't either.
scientist, but I think something has to be done. We got to look at some sort of creative solution on what we can do.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's I don't think it's fair to the residents in that area. And I was surprised how whiny it was. I forgot because years ago had gone out there when the building was going on.
Sure.
But when the gentleman came back and brought it up, going out there and listening to it again, it's uncomfortable.
Sure. Yeah. The unfortunate part is in my previous life, I've actually been involved in a couple of these situations, and you truly have to buy the packages put out by the vendor of the manufacturer of the chiller, which is Trane. And you can't quote me on it because I don't remember, but it was over 200,000. I might have been 240.
A lot.
And there's a reason, because they are guaranteeing the reduction of the decibel, and that frequency is going to go away because they have a fully encased product the way they do it. But that's a lot of money.
It is. Somehow we have to find some sort of a solution.
Sometime. Can I ask Mr. Romano, these blankets that go over the chiller, would they void our warranty with Trane?
Well, so they're only going to void the warranty with Trane if the unit starts overheating. If we continue to have problems, then it will be an issue. At South End School, we did have a similar issue on a smaller chiller. They put a wood stockade fence around it, and that wood stockade fence was forcing the chiller to overheat when it was running at full capacity. So we had to remove a section of it and put up chain link fence in that area. It's not loud and obnoxious like the one over there at JFK or DePaulo. It's nowhere the size, but There's a strong, it doesn't go over the top. All they're doing here is they're putting a sound attenuating blanket on all four sides of the inside of the fence. There currently is a chain link fence they put privacy slats in there to help knock down the sound. But again, it's a frequency sound that's the problem. It's not really the decibel level.
So if you have, say you have the fencing and you have insulation on inside the fencing near the chiller.
Correct.
You have to have X amount of feet of clearance between the insulation and the chiller, with the hopes that instead of the sound going out, it goes up.
Well, these
Does that work?
what
Does
these
that-
blankets do is they actually absorb the sound. They're like foam, and
Okay.
so the sound goes into each piece of foam, and then gets knocked down instead of getting out.
It's the cones, right? It's they come
Yeah.
into the cone.
Yeah.
It absorbs it.
Exactly.
But there's no guarantee that it will alleviate the problem. It could cause additional problems with the warranty from overheating if it's not detected that, oh, by the way, it's overheating.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
We have a monitor on our EMS system that will send us an email and let us know. And our two HVAC guys, first thing in the day and usually after lunch, we'll look to see what's going on with the EMS and if there's any alarms on there. So, and honestly, if the blankets do go on, we'll probably watch them, on an hourly basis when it gets to a real hot day, just to make sure.
Mr. Romano, is there any opportunity to do like a trial run with these blankets?
So
with this vendor, because it sounds like they don't need to be custom made.
They actually are custom made. Are they? The fence is already there, so they make them to the exact size of there, and then it has to be, even at the corners, it's woven together. Gotcha. So it is a custom installation. If it was easy as just putting up, sound insulation, maintenance staff, we would do that, but it's much deeper than that. And these blankets are customized to handle UV and the cold extreme weathers. So they give you, it was a 10-year warranty on the product. So in 10 years, we'd have to do it again, potentially.
So one of my questions, I have a couple. So
Sure.
The unit provided by Train, the expensive unit, I assume is engineered to do exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yes.
So it reduces the frequency as well?
Yes.
So it basically would resolve the issue?
Yes.
So my thought process, again, because Kennedy and DePaulo are identical schools, but where their positioning is next to homes and everything else is very different. So essentially you have a DePaulo where, you have the Armory, which is certainly buffer, plenty of buildings and everything else from other areas. You have our open space land that's right there, which provides further buffering to Sun Valley, that neighborhood. And then across the way, you then have Zion, and then what's left of Evergreen.
Sure.
So you have natural buffer there. I think realistically, and coming from, again, like it sucks, but, I think we as a board have to really entertain doing something that Train has set forth as what the appropriate thing is, at least for Kennedy. I don't think that we necessarily have to do it for DePaulo as well, because we have that natural buffer in that regard. But you have, again, a lot of homes in that area that are very close proximity to Kennedy.
Sure.
And again, like I've actually stopped by there, I'm not even going into that guy's backyard.
Sure.
You hear it. And, again, like me being sensitive to frequencies and tones and stuff like that myself, like I can only imagine that's enough to, you hear it long.
Sure. I'd be glad. You're right. I'd be glad to reprice with Train, because don't forget that was a 2015 price.
Right.
Things have gone crazy, and we can put it on a capital plan with the town.
Right. Well, we also have unaccounted budget, right? That we could potentially just nip this in the bud and go on and not worry about it anymore.
Gotta do something to see.
Well, we gotta look at what items we have there, but if you could, I remember I was on the building committee back then, and it was the price of a house.
Sure.
To put this.
Sure. And we haven't
And we
had
have the
complaints from DePaulo in a long time, but early on we did have a couple of neighbors. It was only a couple, and we haven't heard from them in a long time. I couldn't tell you whether they're still concerns over there or not. But I agree with you. There is a lot of other buffers there. That It's not as tight to the neighborhood.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Jaranowski, what's your question?
Well, I like Zaya. I had gone out in that area. That's like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I have to say that the gentleman I spoke with, he was very nice. And his concern was is that he works nights and he sleeps day. And that wine was just dry. He couldn't sleep. And he doesn't have air conditioning.
Can't open the
So he has to
Can't
sleep
open
in
the
in the summer. Got to leave the windows open. He was having he was concerned. He wasn't upset.
No, he's very
No,
very nice.
He was very
man.
nice about it, but he said, what can be done?
Yeah.
And I know and I said, listen, from the school board's perspective, it's our school, but we didn't build the school, it's the town. The best approach would go to the council. And I think he's gone a few times.
Yes, he has.
And they said no, right? That they would not.
I think they initially said they would look into it. I
And
don't
they
know
did,
whether they did or
and-
not. But the way it is right now, I agree. I've been out there and I heard it. It is annoying. I wouldn't say it's excessive.
But
It's a quality of life.
It's a quality of life.
So if I could make a recommendation.
Sure.
So my motives for putting this on the agenda early on in the school year was to assure both the council and this gentleman that it is on the board's radar and that we are going to continue to seek viable options, and then we can certainly discuss with town officials or as a board the best way to accomplish whatever the best solution is. I just didn't want, given that it was before the summer, it was in the winter of 2021, I didn't want this gentleman to think that we hadn't done our due diligence over the summer. Mr. Romano has worked with Mr. Enquist, and they have vendors out there, and I think they will continue to work together to seek a viable alternative. I don't know that we're in a position tonight to make a recommendation. I think we're all in agreement based on the flow of the conversation. We need more information, but it sounds like we're committed to resolving this in some way, shape, or form for this gentleman.
I think going to train might not be a bad idea.
Sure.
But there should be some engineering firms out there that you can maybe call in and ask their opinion on how to handle this with, maybe there's new technology out there that they
didn't
can
have
offer some solution.
Sure.
I certainly didn't expect that this would be resolved this evening by putting this on the agenda. I just wanted to have a public conversation so that both our council and this gentleman knew we're on it with him, and we're in agreement to try and find an alternative.
Mr. Charnowski?
Yeah, do we know, I mean, is there an issue with that, or that it's like functioning out of spec, or is that just how it is? It's as loud as it is since day one?
Nature of the beast.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I was over at Zion, and I don't know if Chris is still here. I don't hear it in the parking lot at Zion,
Sure.
which is across the street, with the fields. But like Joe said, there's natural buffers around Apollo where you don't have those over at Kennedy. So I'd be curious to see, is there new technology? What's the cost for the drain solution? And are there any alternatives that we could look into?
Glad to research more.
I agree, though. I think the blankets might be a bad idea.
I'm just concerned. I'm concerned with the overheating. I'm concerned with,
I'd rather
yeah.
have something engineered
Can't have that
specifically.
problem.
Yeah,
Agree.
yeah.
Can't have
You need something, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Romano.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank
Have a nice
you.
evening.
Thank you. Okay. Next item, new business, summer school update.
I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Pepe.
Mr. Pepe.
So Mr. Tom Hinman is,
Hinman.
as you see, approaching and hooking up his computer. He's going to give you a presentation overview. Mr. Hinman is currently a math department leader at Southington High School and took on the challenge of taking over our summer school program and has an update
Okay.
for you.
Yep.
Maybe possible.
Yeah, the lights.
There you go. All right, so thank you everybody for having me here this evening. As I was introduced, my name is Tom Hinman. I'm the math department leader at Southern High School, and
Earlier this year, I worked as the director of summer programming here in Southington for grade levels K through. I'm happy to be able to share some of the positives that came out of our summer programming and what we put together. It was a truly great experience, and I'm excited to be able to kind of work forward and to see what we're going to do next year as well. Before we kind of get into it, I do want to, for the sake of not repeating myself multiple times, the appointment of the position of director of summer school came at a time when summer school programming was typically already well underway in planning stages. So when we look at some of the enrollment numbers and things that might look drastically different than they had in the past, keeping in mind that there is also less students that were invited to the program, there was a lot of things that impacted the students' ability to attend the program as we were late in the process. So that's to consider as we go through. So some of our program highlights that were new this year, first thing that I point out was the addition of 2 associate directors that were implemented at the K-5 and the 6-8 level. So Dan Merdzak from Kelly Elementary School was working at the elementary schools, and Davenport from DePaulo at the middle school level. I am immensely grateful for their participation and their support throughout the planning stages and the implementation of the program in totality. I will say that, I worked at Kennedy for 11 years before moving to the high school. I have very low familiarity with elementary. Some of the concerns that Mr. Merdzak had brought to the table in the planning stages were things that I had never considered, but he was also somebody who came to the table with not necessarily a concern, but a solution that had already begun working on at the same time. I thank them up and down for their support and hope to continue to be able to work with them in the coming summer as well. We continue to provide transportation for all students in the K-8 program, as well as our open choice students attending from out of town. I worked extensively with Mr. Romano's office in making sure that we had those buses that were running. We had appropriate stops and the appropriate number of buses that were provided. We had 9 buses at the elementary level, 2 at the middle school level, and we had 1 that ran for our open choice students at the high school level in Hartford. We also employed the use of high school volunteers from the National Honor Society to help with the K-5 Academy, whether it be just escorting students from classroom to classroom, a process they're not familiar with, in a building that they're not familiar with, helping them find the bathroom, arrival and dismissal procedures. These students were there for 4 hours per day for the 4 days that they were in attendance during that week, and they rotated through the weeks, and I couldn't have done a lot of the things that we did without their support, and I hope to be able to do that. I was also excited to run 4 new middle school enrichment courses this year to kind of work with the schedules of those students that were there for other courses. We ran things like a Fit, Fun, Fabulous Summer, where one of the teachers kind of created a curriculum that was around healthy eating styles, healthy living lifestyle choices, and got the kids active throughout the day as well as their academic setting. And even hitting the artistic piece where we had a teacher who does paintings and drawings and was teaching those kind of strategies to kids as well. I hope to be able to continue those programs in addition to our baking and computer coding courses that we also run at the middle school level. The high school counseling was offered for the duration of the program. Prior to this year, we employed the use of Mark Bignacki, one of our grade 9 counselors, for 15 hours to help with the enrollment and the registration and the scheduling process of senior or high school students trying to earn their credit back. This year, we piloted something where we kept him on throughout the duration of the program to see if he could support students in a way to make sure that they were taking full advantage of the opportunity that they had to earn those credits back. And I found him to be immensely helpful, and something I'll highlight later on in high school data with him. High school credit opportunities were offered for 14 different courses, so we still offered a varying array of classes for students to be able to earn those credits in. And I think one of our biggest accomplishments was with the college essay writing course. So this is a course that I know that some of our students here actually did take this summer. Where students are there for 5 days for 2 hours with Mrs. Riley, who's designed the course, where they leave with the majority of the Common App completed with guidance on how to do it, what certain things mean, how to calculate certain numbers that have to go into that, as well as a draft of their application essay that's been given multiple rounds of individualized feedback and critique on how they can improve. There was a day that I was actually in the course, and there was a student that expressed their desire to go to a certain school. On the spot, Ms. Riley was researching that school's application process, what are the recommendations for students that are applying to that school, what are their statistics for students that do get accepted, and how to customize a program for that student in their final year at Southington High School that would get them to their desired school of choice. So it was very, very impressive. And the fact that we were more than double our typical enrollment for that course made me very happy to be creative with the scheduling on that one this year. So another thing that kind of occurred that was a little different this year, I was invited through the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents to give an overview of our program. So my boss visited me at DePaulo Middle School on the 13th, and I spent 2 hours with him. We walked through the school, we looked at the class, he went in, interacted with teachers and students, and for a good hour, I kind of gave him the overview of the structure of our program. Now, the reason I bring this to you tonight is because I kind of wanted to emphasize the positive things that we're doing in Southington for these students, where I have actually been invited by Mr. Watts at some point later on this year to go and possibly present this to other districts as a model for the use of the ESSER in trying to close that gap for students. I was told that we are one of the few districts in the state that not only implemented a program for K-5 in literacy and math, but we also had accountability measures where there was progress monitoring taking place, as well as, I lost one, sorry, as well as a vetted and viable curriculum that was overseen by our curriculum coordinators. So we were given lots of compliments on that and the time, and I'm hoping that I can share that at that presentation. So just looking overall at the session dates and times, so all programs ran from July 5th to July 28th. K through 8 programs went 4 days per week. The high school went for 5 days per week, so 16 and 18 days total. The middle school and the elementary schools ran in 2 separate sessions. There was a lot of interesting scheduling that had to take place here in accordance with transportation. The number of conversations that I had with parents on the phone about this was immense, where if they were taking advantage of district transportation, the students would have to be there for the entire day. But if they were using parent transportation, they could come on the bus, get picked up early, or get dropped off and brought home on the bus. There was all kinds of things that could take place. So even if they were only recommended for one program, we had to balance their day with another session if they were taking advantage of that transportation. So that's where our enrichment courses kind of came to life, to balance those schedules and provide students with real sound educational opportunities while they were there. And high school runs its typical 3 sessions, where we go from 8 a.m. to about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, with our enrichment just going a little bit later until 2:30. So the elementary academy, this was created predominantly under the idea of reading and math intervention. Our invitations to the program went out in 3 different rounds. Round 1, we sent to just tier 3 students that had been identified, where we sent out 250 invitations to elementary school families. In round 2, we sent it to tier 2 families, where we invited 307 families. And then in round 3, this was where administrators and teachers had the opportunity to invite any student that they thought would benefit from the program at their school. And we had 10 invitations that went from that, and only 3 schools had participated. So that's something that I am kind of looking at for next year and how we can possibly incorporate that a little bit more as well. There were a total of 17 teachers at the elementary level, 12 focused on intervention, 5 focused on enrichment. There was 1 full-time nurse that was employed, and then the PD was provided by the literacy and math specialists. That was also another thing that we were complimented on by Mr. Wasta in that meeting, where we provided professional development to our teachers on how to implement that curriculum best during the summer, and not just saying, here's what you're going to do. So as you can see, our numbers compared to last year, as I had said, were in first sight, it looks significantly less, but we were also about 6 weeks behind the previous year's invitation schedule. So there was many conversations with families that had already financially committed to other summer programs, that although they were interested in sending their students, they had already made other plans and said, I wish that I had known earlier. So in working backwards from our timeline from this past summer, we've definitely learned a lot. At the middle school, very, very similar in terms of the structure. The first focus is on reading and math intervention, but we also offer course recovery for the 4 core areas for students that have earned a Y1 failure at the end of the year. So invitations that went out at the middle school level, we sent out about 72 invitations in round 1 for the tier 3 students, 122 invitations in round 2. And then the additional students came from just those students that had failed a course and needed to try to recover that during the summer as well. So again, we had 13 teachers, 7 focused on the intervention and the core recovery, 6 that focused on enrichment, 1 nurse that was shared with ESY, as we do share Kennedy Middle School with the extended school year program. And then again, the PD that was provided by the literacy and math specialist, as well as the curriculum coordinator. So 88 students in total, so only 8 students less than the previous year. So the numbers are pretty consistent with that one. And I received a lot of compliments on the way that that program ran and how smoothly it was at the middle school, with Ms. Davenport's oversight there daily as well. Oh, before I move on from the middle school, one thing that I actually had I did want to touch on was our accelerated math program that we offered as well. I forgot to include that. So students that were not part of the accelerated math program in grade 7 who wish to be part of the accelerated math program in grade 8, we do offer a summer crash course, if you will, to try to step them up and prepare them to make sure that they're ready for that. We did run it this year. We had 8 days of instruction for 3 hours per day with Beth Corbin, who's our math specialist at the middle school level. We had 11 students that completed the course and were able to enroll in Algebra 1 to get that step up and move into the accelerated track in grade 8. So at the high school, obviously we're housed at SHS. We have 14 courses that were offered, 3 electives. Our electives still kind of focused around the idea of SATs and that college essay writing course. We did offer a computer coding course, but we did not receive the enrollment that would support funding that staff. But it is something that I am looking at with the teacher who's designed that course and how we can do better. So 9 on credit recovery, 1 teacher focused on enrichment, solely on enrichment. And then 2 teachers that actually did both credit recovery and enrichment courses at the same time. We had the one Southington High School nurse, and then Mr. Bignacki there is the counselor. One thing that I would like to point out is I did a lot of work with the department leaders at Southington High School this year around the curriculum. I wanted to make sure that what was being taught at the high school during the school program is not only in alignment with the vision that we have for all of our courses during the school year, but it was also in alignment in terms of its rigor and expectations on student work. So department leaders were asked at the end of the school year by me to put together almost an 18-day scope and sequence that could be handed to any teacher that was coming in to teach the program to ensure that we had alignment with what we regularly teach our students in the school year. So that was a new thing that we did this year. So 83 students in total, and that plus 44 really kind of comes from that college essay writing course that you see down at the bottom, where we had 42 more students than any other year enrolled to take that enrichment course that we offered.
It's awesome.
In terms of our credit recovery, this was kind of the monster that I'm sure that you've heard about in the past in terms of the scheduling for some of these students. We offered Foundations of Algebra as a credit recovery this summer as a new program, but everything else are things that we have offered in the past. In terms of creative scheduling, what I mean here is that we had teachers that were teaching multiple courses within the same session. So I had a low number of students that enrolled in Algebra 1. So taking advantage of that teacher's knowledge and expertise with that area, I enrolled students that needed foundations credit in the same session, and the teacher was teaching to 2 separate groups of students within that time period. And the same thing also happened with some of the English courses, just to make sure that we could reach as many students as we possibly can and grant those opportunities in the time that we had. And the teachers were welcome to the idea and actually did a fantastic job of it.
So you would have 2 different classes going in the same.
Yep. And there was periods of time that you would go in and you would also see the classes that were separate working together on similar things because there was some overlap between the skills. But then there's times where you have a small group that's working on some kind of task, but the teacher is kind of doing some direct instruction with the other small group and bounce around. So there was less of kind of that stand and deliver methodology in the math courses and the English courses, and more of that kind of individualized focus attention on the students.
Awesome.
That's neat. So one of the things that we've kind of looked forward to was talking about the addition of the school counselor. So Mr. Bignacki, I was very, very impressed with the work that he did with the students this summer, where he met with every student almost 3 times during the time that they were there in those 18 days, where he went over every credit that they had earned so far. What was their credit card, as they call it, going to look like at the end of summer school if they earned those? Was their programming for the next school year appropriate if they earned those credits? What changes had to be made? Not only did he meet with the students and break it down into student-friendly language, he communicated all that to the families to make sure that they were aware. If there was any reason that I had to be out of the building, whether it be checking the other programs or something that happened, Mr. Bignacki would step in and make sure that, student behavior was within the expectations that we had set. He really, in terms of what he did with those kids, and even one student, I'll just quickly, who was having a very, very difficult time meeting the expectations in his English class. And we found that he had all the information, but couldn't get it down. And Mr. Bignacki said, let me take him. And in his office, he worked with him. And while the student was able to verbally tell him everything he needed, Mr. Bignacki simply just scripted the paper and the student was able to complete what he needed to for the assignment. So he was an immense addition to the program, and I was so happy to have him. And then just kind of looking forward, our elective courses, as I said, we have SAT and then we have that college essay writing course. I would like to expand upon that program. I have heard from some of our unified arts teachers that they'd like to bring in some kind of music program. We have a piano, ukulele, and guitar elective that's offered during the year that is immensely popular. And he's like, what if something like that during the summer on a shorter scale for some students? And some of the art teachers have reached out. So I'm going to work with them throughout the school year to try to see what we can do and what we can at least offer. Not necessarily run, but at least see what the interest is that's kind of out there so far. We lost one. There it is. And then just looking forward to next year, I kind of separated my ideas into two buckets. So we have the organizational items, and then we have the budgetary implications of some things. So I'm going to be working with Mr. Pepe as well as the associate directors on kind of forming their responsibilities as their role was new, and just really making sure that we're all aware of exactly what has to happen, and there's less, are you going to do that? Am I going to do that? And we can kind of make things run a little smoother. I'd like to revitalize the elementary enrichment programming. Prior to offering the math and literacy support, elementary was straight enrichment. And there's a lot of parents that are still communicating, seeking those opportunities for their students. So how can we meet that demand within the district? I'd like to increase the advertisement of our 6 to 12 enrichment program. Sometimes we struggle to get some of those courses off the ground. So ideas like getting the SAT course out as the SAT scores are released in April. So parents, it's fresh on their mind and something that they might want to take advantage of. And flyers and other things happening earlier in the school year. Increasing the partnership with some of the high school clubs, not just the National Honor Society has kids that we can work with. Who else could I possibly utilize their services? Our K through 5. And then, of course, as I talked about, the develop and offer new high school enrichment programs. Budgetary champions that I do consider, obviously we have cognizant of the fact that our ESSER funds are limited. And working with Mr. Wasta, he said that by September of 2024 was the expectation that the ESSER funds had been depleted and districts were kind of finished with that. So looking at the possibility of eliminating transportation, as that was obviously a huge cost that we encumbered there. And what's the implication of that be enrollment in these programs? If these programs are no longer covered from the ESSER funds, are we asking for tuition? And what's that going to look like? Are we going to be able to offer support for families in need if they're not able to cover that tuition cost? And then the big concern, which I say last, is the staffing highly qualified teachers. I mean, it's been 2 years where teachers were paid their per diem hourly rate. And if that's no longer something that we're doing, it's the $39 hourly rate that's in our contract. And are there some that are going to return? Or are we going to have issues filling needs that are needed? And it's just concerns to consider at this point. So that's what I had. I appreciate time.
All right.
Well, hold on. Okay. Mrs. Carmody. You have a question? Yes. Yeah, you're first.
When I'm looking at the high school recovery, I think that there were less students than we've had in the past, correct?
Yes.
And that's the kids' choice. They don't choose to go to summer school.
So,
They
funny
need the
enough,
credits?
so the eligibility guidelines kind of how some of the course recovery students are there.
Right.
Of the students who were eligible to participate in the summer school program, I believe that we only had 6 or 7 who elected to not participate.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
The numbers are down as the students are more present in the classroom, I believe. Going from the hybrid learning and the full remote learning to being back in front of their teacher, there's been a higher level of success in the courses for the students passing overall. So I think that's why that number looks like it does.
Because they used to be higher, so much higher than
Yes.
ours.
That's why, so when you looked at my numbers, it said compared to 2019,
Right.
not 2021, because last year, the number of students that we serviced in summer school was record breaking. So I went back to our last normal year to try to make that comparison for you guys.
Especially our ninth graders, the numbers are quite high with that. I think your idea of the ukulele course, I think Mrs. Clark should probably take it, but I mean, it would really be neat to offer kids something so different and exciting like that. I hope you get to do that. That would be
It'll be a really cool idea to get off the
Is
ground.
this is your first year doing some?
Yes.
Well, you did a great job.
Oh, thank you. I've taught summer school for about 9 years. And then this was an opportunity that I wouldn't pass up.
Well, thank you. You did a great job. Thank you. Great report.
Thank you.
Mrs. Clark?
Yeah, Mr. Carson.
All right. Mr. Hinman, I guess I have a comment and a question. You kind of touched on it in answering Mrs. Carmody. I guess my comment is everything we've heard in the media over these past 2 pandemic years is that our students are falling behind the learning curve. Okay. And so my question is coming from, I guess, that standpoint, which is our enrollment in credit recovery courses is down, but if we believe what we read and hear in the media, it's quite the opposite, that we should have an uptick in enrollment for credit recovery because these students have, quote unquote, fallen behind. In your professional opinion, where do we stand here in our district?
So I can speak to this, I mean, obviously as with my position here, but also as I'm still a classroom teacher. I still do teach students every day. I do believe that there has been a regression in some of our student skills as they come up into the next grade level. You do see some weaknesses, some skill deficits, some gaps in their learning. And it's fallen on the responsibility of the classroom teacher to try to fill that throughout the school year as well. So whether it be the immense professional development that we've offered on tier 1 strategies and how to support students in the classroom and differentiate their instruction while filling those gaps and meeting curricular needs at the same time. Teachers' ability to pivot on the spot, or our SRBI teams that are meeting to constantly review student success data. There really is so much work that's already happening in the school during the regular school day that's working to kind of close that gap and to meet the needs of those students.
Exactly.
So that's possibly why we don't see that number rising, as there still are some students who need it, but most of them get the services that they need throughout the school year.
Okay, so I hear that and I appreciate that. Thank you. So it's your belief that summer 2023, we will not see a large uptick in credit recovery class enrollment. And I'm asking that question from the basis of a personnel standpoint more than anything else, okay? Because you've already expressed the concern, right, of how do we recruit and retain qualified teachers in these summer programs? Because it seems like the crux of the summer program and its success, both now and moving forward, is with these enrichment classes. But my concern is with the credit recovery, and are we producing students year over year that can meet our standards?
So I think, just to kind of speak to this, actually comes to a personal position that I'm in as well. So obviously the high school has its SRBI teams that are for the grade levels 9 through 12 that meet with counselors as well as the administrators to review students who are struggling. This year, the high school has implemented what they're calling a monitored study hall for all 8 periods of the day, where there is an English and a math teacher that are staffing that as their duty for the day and going through Power School with students to help them be successful, as well as also providing some of that supplementary instruction that they might need. And it's a fluid program, so the student doesn't get entered into the monitored study and then they're locked there. So as they demonstrate success and are able to earn the grades that are what we deem successful, they can then be exited and go back to a traditional study hall. In addition to that, I'm teaching this year, which is a brand new course that we've offered, a math intervention. So I teach this 2 periods per day, where it's also a very fluid course. Students can come in and out of it, where I have students in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade all at the same time working on Algebra 1 geometry and Algebra 2 all within the same class period. But my job is to kind of understand their skill deficits and their needs and to work with them individually on trying to fill that gap while they're there with me.
Okay, and are you in the works of also developing something along those lines for English? Just because I mean, I look at your chart here and across the board, English 1, 2, 3, and 4 enrollment was down versus 2019. And you know, my concern is that in 2023 that's gonna drastically increase.
I know that so I can't answer that question definitively with a yes or a no. Unfortunately, I don't know the actual answer to that. But I do know that in the planning phases of all of this in the spring of last year, that the plan was to offer math enrichment for at least 3 periods per day, which we are doing. I have one other faculty member who is teaching it as well as to offer English intervention 3 periods per day. And I believe that they were able to do that with the literacy specialists that they already employ. But I don't have the definitive yes or no to that.
Okay, thank you.
Sean, if I may say something to Sean and you can.
Certainly.
We have instituted at the high school in the last, I don't want to say how many years, maybe 5, all kinds of intervention strategies for these kids, which I certainly can tell you that these numbers are low because I've watched this every year for 16 years or 17 years. And it's all the intervention. We used to have the academy after. I don't know if we still have that. Do we still have the? No, we don't do that anymore. But each discipline has interventions that the administration at the high school has put in place, and it's worked well. So, and you have to remember the last 2 years have been extremely unusual. Right. So to even see those low numbers, and then to listen to everybody telling us that our students are falling behind, just don't believe everything you hear, okay? Because it's not true. Really, it's not.
Mr. Baranowski, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, I had 2 questions. Great job, by the way. Keep up the good work. But I got 2 things, and you may not have the answers here. But of the students, the 68 that took the credit recovery, the success rate, was it 100%?
We were not at 100%, unfortunately. There was one student who was unable to complete the courses we had designed for them. It was a student that Mr. Bignacki and I met with endlessly, and we spoke with the parent. I spoke with the parent on a morningly basis. And it was the student's decision to not follow through on the expectations that had been set for him.
That's fine.
But other than that, everybody else.
That's remarkable still. That's good.
Still pretty good.
The second question is on your presentation. In the middle school slide, you had a total of 88 students, but yet the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade totals do not total up to 88. So is that just
for the math department leader? So this number, if I'm correct, included, we did have a couple of families that had heard about the enrichment courses that we were offering. And I did have a few students that were attending solely for enrichment. So they weren't necessarily part of the grade 6, 7, or 8, like course recovery or intervention. They were just there for some of the fun courses that we were offering.
Okay. No, and that's fine. It's just that,
There's no need.
we're down from, the 2021.
Yep.
And, the -8 and, equates out to the 3 grades. But if you look at the total number of students, there's 30 kids missing.
Okay.
Could be just a misprint.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine.
Question?
I just had a couple of thoughts. So more for administration. So face value of this programming during the summertime, what does it cost? Ish.
It's a combination of the salary, the transportation. Gosh, that's to have that off the top of my head right now is a tough one, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but I'll get you that information.
Okay. Because it makes me curious, even though it's ESSER funding and everything else, I definitely see the values of this. As much as I love the idea of doing ukulele courses and things like that, certainly, again, from a math guy to a math guy, maybe doing something as like an elective for students, as far as maybe resume building, doing things like how to balance a checkbook, how to manage finances, what's a credit card, and let's dig into a credit card. More of like the life skills component.
So
We're
one of the
doing that in
things
business
that
courses, Joe.
the previous director had just kind of brought to my attention, because I did talk about the piano course, and we offer that during the school year. He said you just have to be cautious with offering enrichment courses that kind of mirror things that you do offer during the regular school year, especially on an enrichment basis where we ask the families to pay a tuition, because then they're technically paying for a course they could get for free during the school year. So like you speak to the consumer math course that it's weird that you're asking these questions. I also teach at the high school,
You're a busy guy.
where I do teach all of those things to the kids. So we have them, but it is an interesting idea as well. Yes.
Well, and again, like maybe it's something that we could grow on, that maybe we don't focus, again, what's a credit score? I don't know if we have any programs that talk about credit scores and how they factor in
That
debt.
in curriculum.
In the business
We could talk,
department,
we could talk about that,
But
in
this is what I
curriculum.
mean, like,
Yeah.
this is kind of a good, because in summer school, because now we have such focus on the actual family component, I mean, again, like coming from Polish immigrant family, there was a lot of stuff that was happening, at least in my grandparents' generation, where kids would come home with stuff, and now they're helping to teach their parents, or they're helping to manage the household, or something like that. So it's just, again, like not trying to overstep what we do, but it's more looking at students as the family dynamic, and at the end of the day, like
we help.
The parents, the grandparents, all the people in the home are teachers too. So it's just trying to.
I didn't want to misspeak and give you numbers, so Mrs. Millett has the actual answer to
I
your
had a
question.
feeling she did. I was waiting for you to tag her in.
So consistent with this summer school program that we're talking about, the summer school of year 21, the payroll was 248,000, and the school transportation was 64,000.
Okay.
So those two together about 313,000.
Okay. So something that now, is this something that we can potentially budget for?
Those were through ARP ESSER funds, which was the intention of that grant money. So we'll have to see where we're at with that and what we can do going forward.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. This was an outstanding presentation about an outstanding program that I hope you continue to grow. So thank you for being here tonight.
Very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Hinman.
Thank you.
Okay. We are going to take a recess. I'm sorry.
No, we have a
Do we have an expulsion we want to do now, or do that after?
We can do that after.
Want to do it after? It's
Yeah,
you put it
because
on
it's item
D, Colleen.
It's item D, and we have to do item C first.
Okay.
So we're going to take a recess to go back into executive session, use the restroom if you need
Make a
to.
motion to go to executive
And then,
No, you're going to re-enter.
no. I have the information. All right.
Oh, God.
So- No, because we have to go into executive session, which means excluding the press. And I'm going to-
Everybody else.